S&P 500 futures close over 4,500. Nasdaq rallies over a critical level. Semiconductor index closes right at 500. Walmart rejects at a new high as Target sells down before earnings. First big retailer to release earnings tomorrow after PPI is Home Depot. This will be watched closely. NVIDIA rallies 30 points. We're going to cover this extensively as to why. Monday rallies 13 points. We'll explain why this is good news. The 10-year Treasury hits 422, making a new high on the year. We'll explain why this is happening. Tesla closes below its neckline. We'll drill into why. SMCI rallies right to a critical level. Everyone's favorite sneaker company releases earnings before the bell. We have a lot to go over. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome back. We have a lot to go over. Let's just start with the basics. And let's just drill into the 55 and then we'll go from there. So first and foremost, we are above the 55. The RSI is trying to curl over the 50. These are all good signs. One day does not stop the tide, but we have to start somewhere. And I'll take this over about the 10 days of onslaught that we had. So if we could hold here, maybe rebuild a little bit, that'd be great. We'll be looking for signs of that. Frankly, I didn't see a lot of signs of that today, but we'll get into that in a moment here. Now, if we take a look at this and drill into an hourly chart, you're going to notice the basics run the hourly. You can see how we tried to break the neckline back here in August and just been unable to ever since Japan with their news. And then, of course, we have these other little data points like CPI coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So as we have these macro things that are now affecting us, remember the stool? For those that are new, I would look at the market like this, where you have a macro, you have a fundamental leg, and you have a technical leg. I should come up with a little drawing so I don't have to keep doing this, but it's fine. I think people gives everybody some brevity to laugh at my childlike stool. But if you look at the market, I always look at it this way. So you have a macro leg, you have a fundamental leg on what the market's actually doing, the stocks are actually doing, which is quite well now, in my opinion. Some are missing, some are not. And then you have a technical leg, and obviously technically we're breaking down, but what's driving those technicals around? It's not just that you're at technical levels, you're having macro data that is affecting us. You're having Japan getting rid of zero interest rates. You're having the CPI come out and be higher for the first time in 13 months. So you're having some things drive this. Now, that doesn't mean that we're just going to keep dropping. I would just try to be obvious here about some things that I see that would be somewhat concerning. Number one, if we open up the RSI, the first thing that sticks out at me is we're already back almost to overbought, and we're not even above 45.50. We're nowhere. And we're already all the way worked off that oversold position from Friday at 9 a.m. So all we did to go from oversold to almost overbought already was start here and get to here. Okay, a whopping 1% move. That's not what you want to see. What you want to see is you want to see a massive move on something like that when you undercut to go from here. In other words, if you take a look, if you go from grossly oversold, grossly overbought, you're going to get a huge move. So you go grossly overbought to grossly oversold, and here you got 2.5%. At least that changes, at least that changes the dynamic. Let's get back to this. At least that changes the dynamic. We're not seeing any part of the dynamic changed here. Nothing. Okay, you are still making lower lows. You still cannot get above everything. If we go into the daily, and we'll get rid of all that, start over. And now what I want to do is just drop in the 22 for a minute and just look at this and say, well, when was the last time you were below the 22 this long? Well, it's been a while. And you don't want this 22 starting to point down. So our hope is that we can get up and get through it. But the key level for me with the S&P is going to be at 45.60. And we really have been having a very tough time up there. Now, while you're waiting for that to happen, here's the 12. And so now the 12 is crossing to the downside, and you have a 12.22 cross that you now have to get through. That's not going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you're going to fall off the face of the earth, but it means that you can grind down. So that's definitely something to look at. Okay, it's definitely something to pay attention to. So now the question is, what do we do with this? Well, I always find this interesting. Let's just take that 22 for a second, and let's change that to a 5. And let's just look at a very short-term indicator, and we'll close out the 12. And what's that telling us right now? Okay, so if we look at the 5 right now, and we drill into that a little bit, I'm going to show you this on a different system in a moment. But if you look at this, well, that's your first real close over since August 1st. You really haven't closed over. Okay, so maybe if we can make a higher high, not now because this is after hours, but maybe if we can make a higher high tomorrow, we could build on something. So this is a chart system that I have. And essentially what this is this is the S&P, and it's on a daily chart, and these are the 3, the 5, and the 8, but I do it on a 15. Now, what's happening here? Well, we're still all pointing down, but we're trying to cross. Well, we tried a couple times before, and it didn't really work. Maybe it works this time. I will say this, they're all trying to cross again. We did try a couple times here, but the pattern is still down. So it's really hard to get overly excited about that until this comes down, tests in this area, and then bounces. So what would you want to watch based upon what I just went over? You'd like to see a back test tomorrow, in my opinion, in this whole range. 44.86, 44.80, back test that, bounce off of it and go higher. By the time that happens, these might start pointing up and give us something like this. Because when you get these and you start getting them all to connect in one way and then start widening, which could happen here, well, now we have something that we could work off of. And if we could find something to work off of, then we could start talking about it. But until we have that, we really don't have anything. Now, I'll start backwards with the NQ, and we'll start here looking at this, and then we'll drill into it the same way on the daily. But if you look at this, you can see you have the same thing going on. Now you have the 3-5 cross because the yellow is the 5, the green's the 3, that's the 8. So you are making some crosses here. You are getting some progress. But let's call it what it is. We did the same exact thing here and failed. So it's not a be-all, end-all. You just don't act on it. What you want to see is exactly what it did. You want them to cross the way that they did. Then they make that higher high. You wait for the retest. And what happened on the retest? You never came back. You never got back over that level. So really what you want is come back down, test down here, right? And that's going to be that 15.1. By tomorrow, it'll probably be like 15.2 after hours, after everything marks. Maybe. If not, just watch them. They should be in that area. And then you want to see you make that higher high. Okay, then you have a retest and a breakout. All right, now we have something that we could see if we could build on. For me, the way that I looked at the market today, let's drill into this. The way that I looked at this today, cleaning this up, I don't see anything that I need to be getting warm and fuzzy about here. I'm still below the 50. Okay? We're going to get into NVIDIA in a moment, but I still have my cross. I'm still pointing down, and I got above the 55, which is great. You don't want to be below that for more than 3 days. If we could bounce here, I'd be very happy. I'm just not sure that I believe that the selling's over that fast. So we're going to have to watch how this plays out. We're going to have to go from there. And I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out yet. But I just don't believe that it's done that fast. Usually you should have some kind of capitulation. And we just had absolutely nothing that would even resemble any kind of capitulation or people throwing in the towel. I mean, you just really have day one of it. So, maybe it's factual. Maybe this will be the most frustrating bull market of all time. There's a lot of people saying that. But there's that lower low, and that's really tough to say, oh, you know what I need to do? I need to get involved here. So I would let this play itself out. If you start drilling into some of these names and we start drilling into like the SOX, I have a real tough time looking at that and going, I need to buy that. You have AMAT on Thursday. That's going to be absolutely huge. They are usually the laggard out of the semiconductor equipment manufacturers, and go from there, okay? So watch that really carefully and see how this goes. But watch that really, really carefully. I don't know how this is going to shake out. And what gets me is I have this island up here. And you could see it right here. If I highlight it like that, you'll see the gap there. So I have an island here. I mean, that's an island revert at the top of the chart. You need to fill this gap. If not, one day does not make the market. You've had a leaning right now. And I would just be careful. Maybe you're going to hold the 55, maybe you're not. I'm just not sure yet. And we will get into NVIDIA in a moment here, but I do think we should be Captain Obvious. Market's up 1%, grossly oversold on Apple. We're up $1. I mean, it's not exactly seeing a huge rush of money pour in to buy Apple when it's down 20 points off its high. And we saw discretionary funds, they're dumping equity. So, and we're going to talk about that in a minute here. I will keep this shorter because it is the weekday. And I appreciate all your comments on the last video on Saturdays. For those that are new, all these videos are linked together. But let's just keep going through this. But I do appreciate the comments. It does help me create content. Let's start without this and start here. So AMD completely broke down today and then bounced right back through. I have real issue with how fast these bounce back through. Like, oh, it's okay that we broke it, took out that lower low. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I'm not saying that you can't undercut, flush, get supply, and rip. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just way too orderly. And maybe it's just me with my tinfoil hat. Like things are just, they just made too much sense today between the NVIDIA article that happened to come out at the end of the day, right, on market on close, to Morgan Stanley's statement at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Like there was just a lot of suspect kind of stuff to me that raised my eyebrows, but we'll get into it. So if you look at AMD, you're still in the wedge. I mean, did anything really change today? You just bounced. Are you over the 55, the 12, the 22? No, you just went higher. Okay. So then you start drilling into it a little bit more. Well, all we did was just open and just go straight up on a 45-degree angle. Well, that's not accumulation, that's short covering. Like when you just see this, that's just short covering. They're just people that are stuck that have to cover. That's not someone saying, I need to buy this. I need to get ahead of AMD here because they lowered guidance, right? There's a reason for this. So if you think about it from that perspective, I would take a look at that and I would kind of go from there. So, let's see how this plays itself out, but it's definitely on my radar. MDB, I do want to cover again. You are trying to rally back up after the Monday earnings, and which we will address in a moment here. But you want to watch these kinds of names. All you did was rally to the neckline and then roll right back over and kind of go from there. Now, Monday absolutely crushed. What was great about this is you rallied. I mean, that's a solid beat. And they came back, you dropped 10 points pre-market. This was beautiful. They rallied you 10 points pre-market only to drop you like 10, 15 minutes before the opening to flat. And then they just absolutely ripped it, took it up, came right to a resistance level and then stopped at that resistance level. What is nice about this though, candidly, let me just draw that a little bit better. There it is. What's nice about this candidly is here's your neckline. You got above that neckline. And it's a good sign that you're seeing these kinds of names benefit from coming out with good earnings. Good earnings have not been rewarded last week, and they were today, and it held. So are we going to see more of this? Because it's definitely different than how TTD was treated, which in my opinion, this was a really good quarter. So way better than I thought they were going to have. So this is a good sign, but there are some things that are pretty suspect here. For example, EMPH hits a 52-week low and then miraculously just starts to rally. Like, why? There's only one reason for it. You're squeezing shorts. So there's no reason for this to undercut and then rally there. None. There's nothing technical about this chart that would even remotely think that this is going to go up. This is when earnings were. They missed the revenue front. You were flat here, and I'll show this with pre and post. And then all you do is you undercut, and then miraculously you just go higher for the rest of the day. There's only one reason for that. So you want to look at that and kind of go from there. So that's what I would pay attention to, all right? And we'll kind of see. We'll see what happens there. But that kind of behavior really, really bothers me. It's very telling that they're trying to lure people in. ONON will release earnings tomorrow. I would watch this very closely off the open. Everybody loves this one. You can see earnings right here. Beat, revenue, earnings, crushed, stock went up. Beat even more on the earnings side, revenue down substantially, okay? You just don't know what you're going to get there, guys. You just don't know what you're going to get. And so you have to be really, really careful here. Really careful. There's a lot going on out there right now. And so you just don't know if you're going to get this or you're going to get this. So you're going to want to pay attention to it. I think the biggest tell for me on the retail side was today, just really watching this with Walmart. Earnings are Thursday. Earnings should be great. And all we did was come to this level, and we've been rejecting up here with Wick City. Wicks are what? Price rejection, and that's all we're getting over and over again. You get a reversal bar that encapsulates the past 5 days out of nowhere. That's kind of a red flag ahead of earnings, but you don't know. Maybe everyone just wanted to trade tech today and not get ahead of this because they have time. Maybe everybody wants to get out before Home Depot tomorrow. I think it's important to remember, last week, PPI came out and it was higher, and it went higher on a percentage basis than CPI went, which means the cost of making those goods and services is more expensive. That doesn't do well for retailers. So we're going to see the brunt of this and see if it's going to affect retailers starting tomorrow, Home Depot. ON too, sure, but really Home Depot. And that's something that we have to see, and then we have to see how that plays itself out and then go from there. But that's a real big one for us, all right? And we're going to want to see how this goes, and we're going to want to see how we pay attention to this. But I really want to see this one. I want to see what they have to say about the consumer, because there's a lot of mixed readings there, and this will give us some color for Target, which currently I have a short position in, and I have puts. I'd like to stay in there, candidly. Wednesday, I'd like to stay in there. I just feel like I should disclose that. They have been an absolute dumpster fire on earnings. I mean, you could see last earnings when they broke down here and what happened after. I mean, it went from 154 to 130. I don't know how it got better for them in a quarter with the consumer, and credit card delinquencies are up. I just don't see it. Who knows? You never know earnings. Earnings is life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Right? But this is a pretty nasty bear pendant here. I think you could break to the downside, but we'll see. Then you go into Walmart, and Walmart's already breaking down. So that's an issue. And then I'm watching names like UPST, a little bit of an upgrade today. Trying to hang in there. Maybe it does. I think it's setting up to roll again. This is a pretty nasty pattern when you have a shooting star like this, and then you undercut, because all you did was just trap shorts for 2 days, and then they usually wind up rolling back over, wicks or price rejection. I did start a short in this today. I have some puts. I don't really like this. If I was long, this would bother me. This is a really very easy trade too, because all you're really doing is waiting for this. You have to realize, guys, that they're rallying us super, super fast. Why? Because that's short covering. I mean, this got crushed. So you can kind of see why it would give some back before it may roll again. And if you just put the simplest of indicators in and just look, I mean, you're grossly overdone here. And that's a lot of selling. So it's very possible that we go sideways before we roll. But I think there's another leg down there. I don't know that that's going to hold here. I really don't. I think it's dependent on a myriad of factors, but I'm just not so sure that holds. So that's definitely one that's on my radar. Tesla cutting prices. I think we're past the point here of saying that Tesla's cutting prices to get market share. I think they're cutting prices because they have to. Now, if you look at the newsletter that went out about 2 weeks ago, I put out this article that Morgan Stanley did where they showed that the consumer no longer wants that car. They'd rather have a Mercedes. The new interns that are out there, they interview interns and what they would want to buy. What would be their dream car? Everyone is now Mercedes, and it flipped. It used to be a Tesla. So they're losing market share, I believe, and they're losing some cachet for whatever reason. I'm not going to speculate on it. But I think that's why you're seeing the price cuts. All we did was rally right to the neckline and kind of go from there. So I would watch that. SMCI, you did the undercut and bounce. If we take a look at this, all you did was get back to the 55. Guys, these can go 2 different ways, and this is such a deadly game right here. I mean, this can literally go 2 different ways, and I'll explain what I mean by that. You could do what you did. I'll clean these off for a moment. You could do what you did here, where I was short and everybody was panicking, saying, oh, we're definitely going to go higher. And then we wound up going down, $25. I think that you have to look at it from this perspective, that when you see this, you just, oh, it's automatically going to go up. Or they're luring you in, and then they're going to sweep you down. It's very difficult to look at these trades and have the same level of conviction that you once had when you're dealing with this. This is a very different setup than what you're dealing here. The bars are wider. There's more volatility associated with these bars. The moves are greater. The volume is greater. There is a lot of different moving parts that are going on right now versus what you had over here. And obviously you have earnings as well. I'm not telling you guys not to play these. I'm not telling you not to go on the long side. I'm just telling you to be careful, because you could just come in tomorrow and this could just be back down here at like 265. And then what do? And then it's 258. Like that's the game you're in. The game changed here drastically. And it changed when what happened with Japan and how they got rid of their zero interest rates. We'll get into that a little bit, but this is really important to think about, because when you're seeing this, I'm watching people like look at AMAT. Well, again, I have this island right here. I'm back over the 55. Maybe that goes, or maybe it goes to 22 before earnings. Like we're fighting for pennies now. Now, we're not really fighting for pennies on names like NVIDIA when it goes up like $50 in a day. But does that remotely seem healthy to anybody? And this is somebody that loves the company but currently has a short position in it, to be candid, just from the way that it's been acting. I mean, it's just been acting terrible. Now, you undercut today, and then you bounce. And then you look at this action. Okay, that's pretty obvious what that is. That is, oh God, get me out, I need to cover. Okay, that's what that is. And then they just squeeze you, and they're going to squeeze people into the night, I think. I think they squeeze you into about, 8 o'clock. And I don't know, and I'm going to be real clear about this. I don't know where you open tomorrow. I don't have a clue. I'm going to take all this off so we can talk about it for a minute here. Let me get rid of the indicators. So I want to talk about this. I don't know where they take it tonight, and I don't know if they gap it up or they gap it down tomorrow. But to me, to just assume that it's over because we saw that some insiders own some stock is absolutely silly, or because Morgan came out and said it's worth $500, which only gives you 10% or 50 points from here. To me, it's absolutely silly to think that. Or conveniently enough, the article that just happened to come out at the end of the day, 10 minutes to the market on close, that Saudi Arabia and UAE are trying to buy all the AI chips they can. Yeah, and so's everybody else. And Taiwan Semi has already come out and said that they can't make them, that they're not staffed enough, and that's why KLA went up. And now came back down. That's why Lam went up and came back down. So I would be, again, this is somebody that really likes the company but currently has a short position in it. I'm not telling you not to trade it. I'm telling you to be really careful here, because what happened here with NVIDIA, or what could happen with NVIDIA, could look like SMCI. And what people will tell you is, oh no, that couldn't possibly happen. Okay, if someone told you that UPST was going to be at 70 and then in 4 days it's going to be back to 30, you would say, oh, that couldn't possibly happen. This stock's different. It's not different. Nothing is different. Everything is the same. It's just cycles. So you have to understand where you are in the cycle and realize that NVIDIA better crush in this environment, and they very well could. But to just look at a stock that just went up 50 points like, oh, I got to be involved, you have no idea what you're stepping into tomorrow. You know, you could gap up again and they could trap the shorts and they could rip it again. Absolutely, 100%. But you just need to be cognizant of what you're stepping into. And that's all I can say about it. I find it very convenient that they're doing all this today and they're hitting all these points all at the same time. It seems extremely coordinated to me. I am putting the tinfoil hat on a little bit here. Let's put these back on and talk about the key levels now. I am getting a little tinfoil hat here. You are above the 55, the 12s right here, which is probably where you're at right now, and then you would get above the 22. Clearing those and watching them turn positive, yeah, that would be impressive to me. That might have me start looking at the long side again. Mind you, I don't need the first dollar. I just need to be right. So I don't need to chase this. I just want it to be right. I want it to settle down. But again, I'm just going to stress this. I find that that article coming out exactly when they released it, and Morgan coming out with their buy the same exact way they released it. Like, why did they wait till 12:30 to release that report today? It just doesn't make it. There's a lot of sketchy stuff around it today, and it's a perfect way to squeeze shorts and panic people going into tomorrow. So I would be very careful here. I can't stress that enough. If the SOX itself continues to do what it's going to do, just make sure that you get above these crosses. Make sure that you get above 1550 and make sure that these actually hold. Because if they hold, then we have weeks. We don't have to be first. So keep that in mind. Now, I do want to talk about this because I think it's important. Wednesday, you have FOMC minutes, and I just want to go through this. Since Japan came out and said they're getting rid of zero interest rates and they'll allow it to go to 50 basis points, that means there's no more free money on the street. Globally, they were the last free money. And since then, all that's happened is that the yield has gone higher. The higher that the 10-year goes, the more pressure on equities because you're getting a better yield here while you wait and let things sort out. That's why this is doing what it's doing. It's also why you're seeing pressure on equities. Stuff's all connected. And then we start getting into, oh, we're going to go through deflation. Well, Thursday we weren't going through deflation and everybody was buying energy. Now, because energy was going higher. And energy's still sitting in here, and I would not rule that out. I look at some of these energy names. To me, they still look great. The problem that I have with today's action is it just seemed very squeezy. That doesn't mean that you don't trade it. It just means that you understand the environment that you're in. That's it.